Iran's decades-long nuclear program has once again become a flashpoint in international diplomacy as European powers move to revive sweeping UN sanctions in response to Tehran's growing defiance and the fallout of its latest conflict with Israel. The sanctions, designed to be veto-proof, would freeze Iranian assets, block arms sales, and restrict missile development, deepening the strain on Iran's already fragile economy. Meanwhile, Russia has condemned the move. What does this mean for Iran? And what broader implications if Iran remains hitched to enriching its nuclear capabilities? As we delve into the details, these and many more will be explored in today's Flash News. Good afternoon and welcome. I am Tabitha Akor. Let's begin. France, Germany, and the United Kingdom have triggered the UN snapback, a mechanism to reinstate sanctions on Iran over its nuclear program. The decision follows a series of strikes on Iranian nuclear sites during a recent 12-day conflict with Israel. While the United States welcomed the move on Iran's sanctions snapback, in a statement by Marco Rubio, let's take a listen.
For the Europeans, they have an important decision to make very soon on snapback, on the snapback of sanctions, because Iran is clearly out of compliance with the current deal. As you saw, the IAEA was in Tehran yesterday, issued public statements saying Iran is as close as it's ever been to nuclear weapons. The president's made clear Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. That is not going to happen. We're hoping that talks continue and that they're fruitful and that they can lead to something. We would all prefer a peaceful resolution and a lasting one. It has to be something that actually not just prevents Iran from having a nuclear weapon now, but in the future as well, not just for 10 years with some sort of sunset provision or the like. So we discussed that, obviously, because the Europeans, the E3, have a decision to make on snapback. Because I believe we should all anticipate, based on the public comments yesterday, that they're about to get a report from the IAEA that says not just is Iran out of compliance, but Iran is dangerously close to a weapon, closer than they've ever been. And then, they're going to have to make a decision about whether they want to reimpose these sanctions. And, if Iran is out of compliance, they have to reimpose the sanctions. So that's going to be a factor in all this. And that's why it was important we talked to them about it before our talks on Saturday.
Russia has firmly opposed the move, on the other hand, describing it as illegitimate and lacking legal weight. Russian officials argue that European powers failed to act in good faith under Resolution 2231, which endorsed the 2015 nuclear deal. Russian Deputy Ambassador to the United Nations, Dmitry Polyansky, made a statement. Let's take a listen.
They don't care about diplomacy. They care only about blackmail and threats and coercion of independent countries.
The snapback process, designed to be veto-proof, would reimpose sweeping restrictions on Iran. These include freezing assets, blocking arms sales, and curbing ballistic missile development, measures that could intensify the country's already fragile economic situation. Russia, set to assume the presidency of the UN Security Council in October, has proposed an alternative plan to extend the resolution underpinning their snapback mechanism. The rival approach sets the stage for a diplomatic confrontation with European powers at the UN. Now, will this clash signal a broader power struggle within the Security Council over how to handle global security threats? Or is it simply another chapter in the long-running East-West divide? We see that the European move reflects growing impatience with Iran's nuclear activities, while Russia's opposition underscores competing visions of global order within the UN. Sanctions looms. The international community faces a critical choice: strengthen multilateral cooperation to prevent nuclear escalation, or allow diplomatic rifts to deepen and fuel further instability. While we see that the UN has urged Iran to agree to a nuclear deal within the next 30 days or else sanctions are due to come back, German Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul has urged Iran to agree with the process. Let's take a listen.
They don't care about diplomacy. They care only about blackmail and threats and coercion.
Diplomacy always requires multiple parties, and in this case, particularly the Iranian side. And as I just said, Iran has rejected numerous attempts, including very intensive attempts on our part in recent weeks. Diplomacy must, of course, also demonstrate its ability to act. And that is why, in this situation, I can only urge Iran to make use of these 30 days. It is feasible to find a diplomatic solution, but it requires Iran's willingness and determination to engage in this.
In a recent development, tensions are escalating between the United States and Venezuela. Now, what are the causes of this conflict?
While Washington hides behind accusations to justify aggression.
Colombia has 7 U.S. military bases, yet cocaine production has tripled around them. The real drug mafias are in the United States, and they know it well.
Tensions between the United States and Venezuela are escalating following a major U.S. naval buildup in the southern Caribbean and nearby waters, which Washington says is aimed at combating Latin American drug cartels. The United States President Donald Trump has made the fight against drug cartels a central pillar of his administration, tying it to border efforts to curb migration and also to secure the southern border. While the United States Navy and Coast Guard vessels regularly patrol the region, the latest deployment is notably larger than past operations. According to a U.S. official, 7 warships and a nuclear-powered fast attack submarine are either already in the area or expected to arrive within the week. The deployment includes the U.S. San Antonio, USS Iwo Jima, and USS Fort Lauderdale, carrying a combined force of about 4,500 service members, including 2,200 Marines. U.S. spy aircraft have also been conducting surveillance missions in international waters. Now, does this scale of military presence mark a shift from counter-narcotics operations to broader strategic signaling in Latin America? We see that Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has condemned the move, accusing Washington of violating international law. Caracas formally lodged a complaint with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, claiming the U.S. buildup threatens Venezuela's sovereignty. Let's take a listen.
Colombia has 7 U.S. military bases with personnel, equipment, and technology. And I ask myself, if they have 7 military bases in Colombia, why has cocaine production tripled around all those military bases? Where does the money from the sale of that cocaine go? We're talking thousands of millions of dollars. And that cocaine enters the United States. Who buys it? And the money from those who buy and sell it in the U.S., where is it? In which banks?
That's an exclusive interview with HT. Now, the Pentagon has not publicly outlined the mission scope, but the Trump administration has authorized the use of military force against drug cartels and designated Mexico's Sinaloa cartel, Venezuela's trendy Aragua, and other groups as global terrorist organizations earlier this year. On this situation, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said on Thursday that many Caribbean and Latin American nations support the initiative, framing it as a necessary step to stem the flow of narcotics into the United States. Let's take a listen.
Many Caribbean nations and many nations in the region have applauded the administration's counter-drug operations and efforts, and the president is prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. Maduro is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this drug cartel. He has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into our country, and it is the utmost responsibility of this president and this administration to prevent the illicit flow of drugs into our country.
Well, Maduro's government has announced plans to deploy 15,000 troops along Venezuela's western border with Colombia and urged civil defense groups to hold weekly training exercises. Caracas continues to accuse the U.S. and its allies of conspiring to destabilize the country, labeling sanctions an economic war. With both nations reinforcing military positions, is the Southern Caribbean becoming the next flashpoint in the U.S.-Latin American relations? They say that the latest U.S. buildup marks one of the most significant military deployments in the region in years, further straining already fraught U.S.-Venezuelan relations. Now, this is the report we get. Now, moving over to Indonesia. Indonesian students plan to march on Jakarta's police headquarters on Friday after a motorcyclist was killed by a police vehicle during violent clashes outside the parliament. Let's take a look. The victim, a rideshare driver, was struck by an armored police truck as riot police moved to disperse Thursday's demonstration with tear gas and water cannons, local media reported. Authorities confirmed he was not part of the protest. The incident has fueled anger with student groups accusing police of excessive force. Indonesia's largest student union said it would lead Friday's rally against police violence, with other organizations expected to join. Jakarta Police Chief Asip Edi Suheri acknowledged the motorcyclist's death and issued a public apology. 7 officers operating the armored vehicle have been arrested, and a police inquiry is underway. The protest on Thursday centered on lawmakers' salaries, education funding, and the government's school meals program. Demonstrations extended into the night, leading to hundreds of arrests. Jakarta Legal Aid has called for the release of more than 600 detained protesters. In a separate reaction, motorcycle drivers staged a protest outside riot police headquarters, prompting the military to deploy officers on Friday morning to calm the situation. The death has heightened tensions in the capital, as student groups vow to sustain demonstrations until accountability measures are taken. Now, moving over to Africa. In Rwanda has confirmed the arrival of 7 deportees from the United States in mid-August under a bilateral agreement with Washington. According to government officials, each case was reviewed and approved before entry. The deportees are currently housed by an international organization and are receiving support from Rwanda's Social Services and International Organization for Migration. Authorities said those cleared for settlement will have access to accommodation, workforce training, and health care. 3 deportees have requested repatriation to their countries of origin, while 4 expressed interest in staying and rebuilding their lives in Rwanda. Earlier this month, Kigali announced it would accept up to 250 deportees from the United States as part of President Donald Trump's broader immigration enforcement agenda. Rwanda joins Uganda, Eswatini, and South Sudan as African countries that have signed similar deportation agreements with Washington. Human rights experts warn that such deportations could breach international law by returning people to environments where they may face torture, abduction, or other abuses. Let's take a listen.
We are concerned, of course, about the conditions that they're being held in, but we're really concerned about the fact that they're being held at all. I think we're deeply concerned precisely given the context, the uncertainty of we don't know what is happening to people, and that would raise concerns indeed that families do not know where their loved ones are. Lawyers do not know where they are. In fact, no one knows where they are for certain, and we don't know the legal basis. So that is raising huge human rights concerns indeed. So indeed, given the circumstances, given the risk of the fear of human rights violations being committed, there may well be concerns of enforced disappearance, and of course that, you're quite right, it is a really serious issue under international human rights law. These reports indicate that many of the detainees were not informed of the US government's intention to deport them to be held in a third country, that many did not have access to a lawyer, and that they were effectively unable to challenge the lawfulness of their removal before being flown out of the US.
An excerpt covered by Al Jazeera. Now moving over to South Africa. In Africa, with just 100 days to go, South Africa is stepping up preparations for the historic G20 Leaders Summit in Johannesburg, the first ever to be held on African soil. As South Africa's G20 presidency nears its conclusion, 87 out of 132 planned meetings across the Sherpa and finance tracks have already taken place. The remaining ministerial gatherings in September are expected to set the stage for the Johannesburg's Leaders Declaration, which will focus on solidarity, equality, and sustainability as guiding themes for the summit's global economic agenda. Key issues on the agenda include tackling global inequality and addressing mounting sovereign debt burdens. In response, President Cyril Ramaphosa has established a G20 task force led by Nobel Prize-winning economist Joseph Stiglitz. The group is tasked with exploring wealth disparities and recommending practical solutions. But can these proposals shift beyond dialogue to produce reforms that resonate across both advanced and developing economies? One unresolved question is whether the United States President Donald Trump will attend in person. He has been openly critical of South Africa's policies, particularly land reform, and has also suggested he may send a representative instead. Now, if he stays away, what message would that send about U.S. engagement with Africa at a moment when the continent is seeking a stronger voice in global governance?
It's only South Africa. Terrible things are happening in South Africa. The leadership is doing some terrible things, horrible things. So that's under investigation right now. We'll make a determination. And until such time as we find out what South Africa is doing, they're taking away land, they're confiscating land, and actually they're doing things that are perhaps far worse than that.
Despite this uncertainty, South Africa has maintained its invitation and signaled that the summit will proceed as planned, regardless of Washington's final decision. The real test lies in whether the gathering can deliver not only symbolic value, but also practical commitment that address Africa's development challenges in a volatile global economy. We say that the November summit will mark a defining moment in South Africa's diplomatic history, positioning the continent at the center of global economic discussions. Yet, symbolism alone is not enough. Will Johannesburg become remembered as the summit that shaped or reshaped global priorities toward fairness and inclusivity, or simply as a historic first without lasting impact? A critical question right there. And what impact will this have in Africa at large? Now, until next time, this is where we'll be drawing the curtain on today's Flash News. Stay tuned for Horizon.